Okay, last night I was watching a race on TV where Ricky Thornton just annihilated the field. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself more and more about car balance and keeping everything working and not getting an arrow push when you get behind cars and stuff like that. So today I wanted to do a video kind of on car tuning and how I always thought about tuning cars and changes to make to keep the car well balanced. So you don't have to set a car up for the top or the bottom or anything. Maybe if there's a big cushion, you got to kind of look out for stuff like that. But I don't think our cars are today where you really want to concentrate on running the top or running the bottom. We need to keep a car that's neutral. So let's roll the intro and let's talk a little bit about keeping a car neutral. I've spent the last 30 plus years working on race cars, building race cars, and racing cars. And I'm here to help you better understand racing technology. Okay, the first thing I wanted to cover is we still need to maintain the importance of keeping the front end planted, especially the right front, because that's going to keep that left front tire digging and relevant. Once we start chaining up that left front and we pull that left front down, we're not getting the traction on that left front to help us steer in the corners. I think that's where some of the problems with arrow push come in and everything everybody is having now when they say they get behind a car and the front end washes out. Oh, when you're chaining up one of your tires and you're only steering off of one tire and then you take some downforce away from that tire, your car's going to get tight. I mean, it just is, especially with the angle we're putting on the deck. It's incredibly important to use the front as well as the back to steer the car and keep the car neutral. That's why I really think we still have to concentrate on getting that right front down as low as we can. Next thing I wanted to cover is the difference between dive and roll. When I was working with the Mitchell program on front end settings, you could adjust dive and roll and you'd get that car attitude there. I think what I'm seeing a lot on TV now is the guys are taking the roll out of it to keep that left front down, but the dive is still there, and I think that is important. But I think if we can put a little bit more roll in there and get that right front down further and actually get that roll to kind of jive with everything there, I think we'll have a better handling car, because then that will give you more angle on the car and still maintain that droop rule. I think the droop rule at some point may be going away. They experimented on some bigger races on throwing it out this year, and it may be sliding by the wayside, or at least getting as unpopular as I think it is. One way I still think we got to work towards is getting the clearance on the right front in that chassis up there. And there's different ways. And I think guys now, the smart racers, the more professional racers, the people with some resources other than chassis companies are going to start experimenting in this direction. Several years ago, it wasn't unheard of to buy a rocket and all of a sudden you start shooting your own holes in there and, you know, making your own adjustments. Actually, I heard years ago when guys were on the Masters Built program, they'd buy a Masters Built with the front end pieces just tacked in, and they would take it back to their shop, put it in their jig, knock all those pieces out, and do their own thing. And I think we may be to a point where guys are going to have to start screwing with this stuff on their own to make a better car. Our cars are too closely aligned now where it's just down to a shock and a spring. So if you want to see big advances, I mean, show and season dominating advances, kind of like Davenport had this year and Overton had the year before. I think we're going to get to a point here in the next year or two where guys are going to really start digging into this on their own, and they're not going to tell their chassis builders what they're doing. So get educated on this and start leading the trail and doing your own thing. With the left rear, I've never been a big fan of lowering that rod. I know that adds, wedge and traction and everything else. It messes up your right side alignment of your tires, which I think is crucial to getting a car to handle and steer good. There are times maybe that you might want to lower that left rear, but that would be if you show up to a track and it's not all expected on what you thought it was, and all of a sudden, yeah, we got to lower that left rear, take some roll steer out, it's going to give us some traction, some dynamic wedge, it'll be a good thing. But this drying the track out, lowering the left rear lower to get traction in the car, it takes out so much steer and does so many other things to the car. I'm not a big fan. But there is one thing that I am a big fan of. I am a real big fan of keeping the angle in the left rear, but then lengthening that rod and actually moving it ahead on the frame, but keeping the split length difference between the upper and the lower within about an inch. We always had that on our cars, and our cars were tractioned up pretty good, and really that left rear and our whole rear end really got a hold of the track back in the day. Now I think to get a car like that to work, it just would take a lot of time. I think those cars are still good, but it takes so much time to get the wheel loads and everything working the way it should. It's going to take some front end updating, but the difference in the left rear rods, if you can get that sometimes down to with an inch difference, like a 17-inch upper and a 16-inch lower, and move it ahead on the frame, but keeping the angle in it so you get the same rear steer in it on and the right side tire alignment, I think that is something good. Here's another thing to consider when talking about right side tire alignment and bar angles and stuff like that, and body roll and chassis roll. When you increase roll and the right side tires are getting pulled further left because of Panhard bar adjustments or Panhard bar angle, the car will get tighter on the right rear. So I always thought it was better to keep in your mind the right side tire alignment dynamically than just like raise or lower the J bar. I mean, when you make changes to the rear of your car, make sure you're thinking through everything that change is going to bring you. And like I said, Panhard bar adjustments are big because they not only give you stick, but they're also under like travel, they are bringing that rear end further left, which offsets that tire alignment right front to right rear and making your car tighter that way too. So, if you wanted to, maybe if you did angle your J bar more to get the car tighter and bring in more consistency, you might want to put a wheel spacer, a thin one, quarter, half inch, on the right rear so you still maintain that tire alignment. I think there's so much going on with the Panhard bar adjustment. I'm real leery on doing stuff like that now. So I guess what I'm saying is if you do lengthen your left rear lower and to keep that split small but still maintain that angle, you may have to move that left rear rod up a hole on the chassis because lengthening the lower but then keeping it in the same hole will give you indexing, but in the long run it will take some steer out. You might want to increase the angle on that left rear lower and keep the steer the same dynamically. But the lengthening of left rear lower will put more indexing and preload in that left rear and keep that thing digging. Last thing about wheel loads and getting your tires to stick. Now we can always put turns in there and we talk about adjusting wheel loads. And anybody that's watched my other videos know that the term wheel loads kind of drives me nuts. If you really want to affect the wheel load your car sees at any given corner as you're racing the track, you're going to need to move some lead. Just adding cranks in a certain corner will raise the ride height. It doesn't affect the wheel load except for putting the push pointer a little different or taking some wedge out maybe. But if you want to really stick a corner more, moving lead will be more effective than the actual just turning on the spring. So I guess at the end of the day, what we're ultimately looking for in a car is a neutral steering car where you can throttle that thing almost all the way around the track. Anytime you lift the throttle, it's usually because the car is too tight, because you have to plant the front end to make it stick and get it to turn. A good neutral car has very little throttle change. I mean, on a big sweepy track, you got to be able to bury that thing in the corner and get that thing to turn with the wheel. Deeper you can go without lifting the throttle and planting the front end, the better your car is going to be. So if you like this video, subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. I will see you in the next video.